Hi there, my name is Kit Ocon. I am a 24-year-old painter based in Dallas, Texas. This 2023 spring semester, I was dedicating myself to studying the masters and learning from their oil printing process. And one of them that I decided to focus on was John Singer Sargent. This is the painting that I decided to recreate, and in order to recreate it, I had to do a little bit more extra research on John Singer Sargent himself. What I learned was that he was born January 12th, 1856 in Florence, Italy. He did pass in April 1925 in London, the UK. He was part of the Impressionism and American Renaissance movements. His use of color and his values are absolutely spot on and amazing. In order to recreate his paintings, I first looked at what palette he used, and I tried to use as close to those colors as I possibly could. So his palette was silver white, Naples yellow, yellow ochre, ochre dew, which is also English red, red ochre, vermilion, ivory or coal black, and Persian blue. I did not have all those colors, so I instead used the colors that I had, which would be I used transparent red oxide, burnt sienna, burnt umber, ultramarine blue, viridian, Persian blue, titanium white, yellow ochre, Naples yellow, and cad red light. Now, I believe those are all the colors I used. Maybe a few little touches here and there to get a specific color, but those are going to be the main colors that I did use. So some things that I did learn is that he paints very thick, and he does not normally paint space by space. He always paints into his paint that he's already painted, so he kind of paints into the paint and adds to it as he goes, and that gives it that nice effect that he's got going on. He is he's very adamant that you should omit everything except for the most essential elements, which would be the number one being values. Values are the most important. If the values can read in a painting, then the painting can work. Whatever colors you use, composition, 9 times out of 10, if the values are right, the painting will work. He began with middle tones and then worked his way out, which so what I did is I started with my middle tones, and then I worked my darkest, and I did my lightest. But I believe that he worked lightest and then darkest. And yeah, so let's jump into here. First, I'm going to start with my underpainting. So I initially took the painting and I projected it onto the canvas. I used the same size as he did, which I believe is like 2 feet by 4 feet, around that size. And so I projected the painting onto the canvas, and I then sketched out all the contour lines on the painting, which you can see in this photo here. Doing the projector made it a lot easier to get the painting perfect. So I wanted to mainly focus on his use of color and values, so I did not want to have to worry or waste time on worrying about my sketch when I already have the perfect sketch from his work. So I just projected it and went on to the values. So my second layer, I did a layer for the values. So I went in and I added in all my darks, my darkest darks. Then I did that after I did a wash of mid-tone, I should say. And then that way my darkest darks would be darkest darks. And then I went with some OMS and I marked out all the highlights and the brighter areas and the places that are really emphasized in his painting. And I also went through with my phone and I would go back and forth from using a filter to make it black and white, so that way I could make sure that my values were on track with what he had. After I was done with that, I let that dry and started on the background. So the background, it is very impressionistic. Lots of viridian greens, ultramarine blues, burnt umbers, and yellow ochre. With that, I just really wanted to make sure that I was capturing the right colors and the right movement going on back there. I wasn't too focused on making it exactly as he did it, but I wanted it to have the same movement and expressionism that his painting gives. As you can see in this photo, I also started putting in some color in the not so important areas. So, you know, below his legs, the little column that she's sitting on. And for the waterfall, I went through and I added in just a light, just something so that way whenever I went through with a palette knife with white, it would have a background for it. Background color. Alright. In this next photo right here, this photo is actually when I added in color. So once I got that background down, I knew it was time to add in as much color wherever I could see it and put it to add it. I wanted to really make sure that I was getting as close to his colors as possible. I think that I achieved that very nice. I learned that he uses so much more green in this painting than I initially saw. What I thought was going to be browns or blues actually turned out to be greens, and that was really interesting to me, and I can see how it makes sense with the painting, with there being so many greens all throughout, because it really ties in the background with the foreground. When adding the color, I think that the hardest part was remembering to stay as loose as possible. And whenever I learned that he painted a wet into wet technique, it was much easier to stay loose and be loose with my paintings. So in this photo you can see like I had already kind of refined the hat a little bit, and that right there was kind of where I started my practice of painting wet into wet and just kind of trusting just kind of going for it and really trusting my eyes. And once I did that hat, it was over. I was ready to do everything. This next photo is a photo of the as finished as it is piece. His face was initially giving me a lot of problems. In the last photo, you could tell that the face has changed dramatically. I did the face, and then I didn't feel like it was right, and then once I started painting wet into wet on that's whenever that one really came together. I had to slim it down because in the original photo, or in the original painting in the last picture that you saw, his face was a little bit too wide, and it did not match the photo. And I wanted to make sure that I did match at least as best as I could while still being expressionistic. I think that I'm really happy with the way that this painting came out. It was really interesting seeing the way that Sargent puts colors down, and it looks like they're different values, but a lot of them are still the same value. Most of the painting outside of the woman painting the man is a pretty dark value, and while looking at the painting, you really wouldn't think that, but once you put that painting in black and white, it makes it really easy to see that the values is what really makes this painting just pop. It's what really makes that woman the focal point. And John Singer Sargent, he was a master in that. He knew exactly what he was doing with that brush. So I learned a lot from him. This semester, and I am very excited to see what else I can learn from him and other artists. Thank you so much. Have a great day.